Russian doctors will bring this dog back to life. Even though the canine has been dead for over 10 minutes, the doctors used a special tool to bring him back. How did they do that? Well, we'll tell you in a minute. These are the zombie dogs. For 19 minutes and 31 seconds, Russian medical researchers revived dead dogs. The movie's called Experiments in the Revival of Organisms, which aired in 1940. The whole world gasped as severed dogs' heads opened their eyes and reacted to sound. How they did this is beyond believable, but they claim they've done it with a special tool. It's called Brukhonenko's autojector, and these Russian scientists have used it to resuscitate several clinically dead dogs. If the animal had passed away and was connected to this machine within 10 to 15 minutes of death, then the autojector would do wonders. The special heart-lung apparatus helped. The two doctors behind these experiments are Sergei Brukhonenko and Boris Levinskovsky. The two doctors received the Lenin Prize, and the first operations on heart valves have been said to have originated from here. The machine works on a similar principle as the ECMO machines and the modern machines in nephrology used for renal dialysis. Many prominent figures criticized them for this attempt, but a lot of them showed nothing but admiration and respect for the two doctors who reunited these dogs with their loved ones once again. Take this dog, for example, has been revived after 30 minutes of death. Next, check out these see-through frogs. Back in 2016, scientists were able to breed see-through brown frogs for the first time. To do this, they were experimenting and crossbreeding different rare color morphs of the Japanese brown frog, and one of them came out with see-through skin. The reason for this, according to scientists, is the absence of chromatophores in the skin. Those are the skin cells that contain pigment. This little frog has only a few of these chromatophores, but they're particularly sparse on the underside of the frog, and it's precisely this reduction that allowed scientists to create this fascinating animal. The reason we say fascinating instead of horrifying is because the animal is not harmed in any way, shape, or form. In fact, this little discovery might lead to saving a lot of froggy lives. Why? Because scientists will now be able to see through the skin of the frog, look at the internal organs, and decide what's wrong. They won't need to get anywhere near a scalpel. This guy is a tumor fish. For the first time ever, these tumor fish appeared on the aquarium market in Malaysia in the 90s. Since then, they've been able to smash that like button just like you should if you haven't done so already. But no, in all seriousness, these fish have been wreaking havoc everywhere they went. You see, people like them for their color, but the problem is that many of the males are sterile. Only some of the males are fertile, which means breeders had to spend years before finding a fertile male. After breeding, some of those fish had undesirable body traits. The flower horns that couldn't be sold were released into the wild. There they bred quickly with the females, beating out the other males to it. They're aggressive and eat the other fish. Entire ecosystems were destroyed by these little rainbow-colored monsters, and that's why today many Western countries have banned them. Now let's look at the Vacanti mouse. While Malaysians were busy breeding monster fish, the picture of the Vacanti mouse was spreading like wildfire on the internet. People were sharing it through email as a joke. So many people believed it was photoshopped, but oh, how wrong they were. Researcher Charles A. Vacantia in the Department of Anesthesiology at Massachusetts General Hospital and two other scientists took a biodegradable ear-shaped mold and implanted it with cow cartilage. They then took that little object and implanted it under the skin of a nude mouse. After a while, the cartilage grew to the restricted shape and size, and the mouse was photographed before being sacrificed. The quote-unquote sacrifice to remove the ear from the mouse sparked nationwide protests where people argued against these brutal forms of genetic engineering. Don't forget about the Belgian blue bull. Selective breeding isn't done only on small animals. Large animals like the Belgian blue bull have been bred for generations to accentuate their naturally muscular physique. Even though many people think that these bulls are more physically active because of all that muscle, we should tell you that it's not hypertrophy or enlargement of the muscle cells which give the bull its large appearance. Rather, it's hyperplasia, which is an increase in the number of muscle fibers. The initial intention was to breed bulls that would look like giants and pack more meat than any other cow. Later, it was discovered that these extra muscles only made the bulls slow. They reduced their tenderness of the meat and increased the amount of food they consumed. On top of this, males have reduced fertility, and farmers have to schedule C-sections for the females. If they don't, natural birth is impossible because the calf is extremely big. And then we have the spider goats. They look just like any normal goats, but Professor Randy Lewis has a secret. The goats at his farm at Utah State University are unlike any you've ever seen. In their DNA, they've transplanted a spider gene. This means that the milk they produce will now have spider silk inside it. Adam Rutherford, a journalist for the BBC, visited this farm and was stunned to see that the milk looked just like any other goat's milk. The professor explained that the only difference comes at the molecular level. If you were to look at the milk under a microscope, you'd see an additional protein from the spider silk. This is later extracted and spun into a silk thread, one of the strongest threads in the entire world, derived from one of the strongest substances known to man. What about the featherless chickens? About 80 years ago, they found a mutant featherless chicken in California. Since that discovery, the chicken has been bred and the line has been maintained. Now we have a special breed of featherless chickens which tend to behave just like normal ones. Despite the outrage from the people fearing that the chickens are not protected, they're better equipped to handle the heat in warmer tropical climates. Since this interview, the scientists have been trying to crossbreed these chickens with broilers so they can put more meat on without any feather waste. Might be a good idea from a scientific standpoint, but this seems a little cruel if you ask us. Next comes the human-pig chimera. Every day, 22 people die because there are no organ donors. And every 10 minutes, they add a new patient to that list across the U.S. That's precisely why a group of researchers at the Salm Institute have created the very first human chimera. A chimera is an animal that hosts cells of two different species, in this case, pigs and humans. The goal was simple: to start growing vital organs inside animals so we could later donate them to the people who needed them most. In the past, chimeras were the stuff of legend. Nowadays, they're still the stuff of legend. A lot of people have revolted against the creation of human-animal hybrids. Despite the potential positive outcomes, this project is still ineligible for public funding in the United States. Despite the intention, the majority of people think that it's arrogant for humans to think that they can take on the role of nature. We also have sterile pink bullworms. Pink bullworms have been wreaking havoc on the Arizona cotton crops ever since they were discovered in 1917. But the sterile pink bullworm has been able to drop the infestation rate by 99.9%. How? Well, first of all, scientists decided to use a double strategy. On one hand, they developed modified cotton crops that produced a toxin deadly only to these pinkies, but when resistant moths emerged, which were unaffected by the toxins, they introduced these sterile moths. Whenever one of these bullworms would mate with the sterile pink bullworm, they would be unable to procreate anymore. Thus, they finally put an end to the Arizona plague once and for all. Of course, there are the dead-end mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are the animals that take the most human lives per year. 725,000 individuals across the globe die because of some mosquito-related disease. Similar to the pink bullworm moths, a biotech company called Oxitec from the UK has come up with a plan to create flightless female or sterile male mosquitoes. The reason they're called dead-end is because when they're released in the wild and mate with the normal mosquitoes, the offspring would die before reaching maturity. This is a bold plan and has been tested only in controlled areas. Why? Because it might eradicate some deadly diseases. But mosquitoes are an integral part in the food chain. They're the main source of food for many fish. And if they were to be eradicated altogether, this plan could have cataclysmic effects on the balance of nature. YouTube thinks you should watch this video next.